Charlie Kirk had the SCP-096 element on lock. Candace Owens had the stiff wig black token element. Ben Shapiro is short. I think that hurt his ego enough. 5'4" on the dot exactly. These people have been around for a long time, and needless to say, we were getting bored. We needed a new avatar, one hidden enough to infiltrate community and stir up discourse, one that would bring the Django Unchained Stevens out. And here he came. Caucasian reveal, veal. The aura of malarkey is stored in the hairline here, but nevertheless, he has a question for us.
Am I racist? I would really appreciate it if you left.
And with this question, our Caucasian of the day has infiltrated movie theaters all across America, Canada, grossing almost $11 million worldwide. Obviously, with how well it's been doing, earning Matt Walsh a Joe Rogan endorsement, coverage on news channels, and of course, the nods of those black people that are like not like us, like those people, like that video. I watched that video and oh my God. Like us. Matt Walsh was trying to create disruptive art. This is what's supposed to happen, right? A white man hops on and presents the question, am I racist? And we, the audience, must judge his character. I mean, he asked for us to do it, right? Now, if you were a white person, wondering if you were being a nuisance, you know, just a downright reincarnation of 1800s Confederate America to your black counterpart to the right of you, would you set up a studio in your room, sit down, you know, take a shower, do your hair, put on that nice face powder, look a little pastier than you did the last time, and then cry on your platform filled with millions of viewers that it's an injustice that you can't say the N-word?
You know, the idea that there's a word that cannot be uttered under any circumstance is completely insane.
Matt Walsh isn't very happy, you guys, because he wants to be able to step outside of his friends and also his own house to spout off the N-word anytime that he'd like. As a matter of fact, he'd like to wag his finger in some black person's face and call them names as many times as possible. Maybe even like incite some violence towards them as well. It's okay, Matt, we already know. You say it all the time. His problem is that he'd like to go ahead and go back to the good old days of saying it like they used to.
Well, I come to you today because I think Matt Walsh is asking a very convoluted question. And this is where you got me messed up, good sir. See, you jest me. I, for one, know you're racist. Matt Walsh has continually parroted racist stereotypes, tropes, and rhetoric in order to build up his platform. But oddly enough, now he's trying to act like he hasn't. And to an unsuspecting public, this is very dangerous. When he's posed up as a pure-hearted, naive white man who doesn't know what he's doing, when in fact he kind of does. Like, does this feel racist to you?
Well, yes, I'm going to make the case that for a white settler in the 1800s, for them to have racist attitudes was not that those racist attitudes were not as bad as the racist attitudes that you might find today.
First of all, notice how it's broad daylight, a nice sunny day, a Saturday morning maybe, and he's sitting in his vehicle writing philosophical fanfic about European colonialism. As much as I cheer for the villain sometimes, never once in my life have I ever thought, oh, those slave owners had a point. I never thought that. You know, that doesn't really occur in a non-racist person's head. I think that's a little weird. Some people would say that's weird too, and I'm one of those people. Furthermore, this little clip is important because it directly parallels the message of the movie. In the trailer, you can hear Matt Walsh say,
growing up in the 90s, I never thought much about race. Sure, you noticed, but never really seemed to matter that much. At least not to me.
Which is weird because, you know, like back in the Toyota, you were saying.
But if we were to encounter that with this alien, you know, with this hypothetical alien race, who, you know, they look a lot like us, but they're also profoundly different in how they look. They're very different in how they act, how they speak, their customs and everything. If that were to happen for us, there would be a very real debate among us about whether or not these creatures are equal to us. That would not be a given under any circumstance.
Which one is it, Matt? Which one is it, Matt? Which one is it, Matt? Sean Kingston hit it. Which one is it, Matt? Who cares? There's a bit of a conundrum here. I find him disingenuous for a number of reasons. But first of all, who is Matt Walsh, you may ask? Who is the man that looks like a gym teacher who teaches social sometimes, you may ask? Currently, he's a media personality in the company The Daily Wire, joined by people like Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk. Yes, Charlie Kirk, the same person that went viral for this debate.
Hey guys, I'm the girl from the Jubilee video.
A fetus is in utero.
What does fetus mean in Latin?
What the f? I'm sorry, is this
it means little human being.
Everyone in the Daily Wire has their own little problems, you know? Ben Shapiro kind of rallies against black people a lot.
According to Pew Research, the net worth of white families in 2013 was $141,000. For black families, it was $11,000. even less than the 19,000 it was in 2007. According to economist Edward Wolf of the University of New York, excluding vehicles and other durables, the median black family worth is just $1,700. While 40% of black families have zero or negative wealth. White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community.
There was one time where he literally reviewed a Megan Thee Stallion song and then just said rap isn't rap. And then he went to go do his own rap. And it was awful and it didn't do anything. And he did the rap with this Tom McDonald, a guy who viciously hates black people.
Every Caucasian's a bigot, I guess every Muslim's a terrorist.
Candace Owens is just kind of there. Just kind of there to be the black friend that accepts all this.
I'm gonna play for you the first 30 seconds of a statement she made about Adolf Hitler.
I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine.
Disregarding them, the Daily Wire basically hosts Matt Walsh to make YouTube videos about 17-year-old TikTokers that just, I guess they like the same gender, and then Matt Walsh just attacks them for millions of views, for millions of dollars for his company. 40-year-old unlimited money scheme. He's like evil Drew Gooden, hell-bent on the damnation of people that think guys may be a little bit pretty sometimes. His content revolves around stoking anti-queer rhetoric. In fact, he's one of the most popular figureheads of anti-trans doctrines. However, race is what he's decided to tackle next, in his ontologically receding voice up there. So when someone aligns themselves with racists, hates on queer people for money, shows up, tries to push this agenda in the government, continually is shut down, and needs another place to go, the racism is where they run to. However, today, Matt Walsh, today is your lucky day. As a reliable black guy who talks about things if they're racist or not, and they've done it sometimes. Hi. We have to talk about why this movie matters. This disillusioning image presented in the movie title with its provocative text, "Am I racist?" and this weird joke, and this right-wing figure are dog whistles for the movie's bigoted content. We're gonna be bouncing back and forth between Ben Shapiro's ironically titled King of Satire and Disguise interview, some pumpable resources, and my own personal commentary to get to the top of this hairline. To the Daily Wire intern reviewing my video, that's the 4th hairline joke, by the way. Here are Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro going off about the fathamizations of Am I Racist?, Matt Walsh's movie. Firstly, I have a problem with the image presented. Yes, the image. This is Ben Shapiro on the YouTube channel Ben Shapiro, right? Ran by the company The Daily Wire, right? Well, I think talks like Am I Racist are good and transformative for the people and community inside of it. I don't think Matt Walsh is genuine in his approach, framing, critique, or even nuances of social functionality. At his core, what Matt Walsh doing here is replicating his same formula of outrage he's manufactured over the course of his decades-long career in order to reap profit for the Daily Wire. Something mimicked by each of the Daily Wire's hosts in different ways, as you just saw. But to find out why this specific question is being asked like right now, and why these people always seem to be like the avatars of Confederate spirituality, we have to delve into the Daily Wire's beginning. I'm sad to inform you that this is an iceberg of racism that's only poking its head out in the form of Matt Walsh. He's actually had a decades-long career doing sort of the same thing. From early 2010 through August 1st, 2011, Matt Walsh co-hosted a radio show called The Matt and Crank Program along with Andrew Crank Murr at WZBH The Beach 93.5 FM, based in Georgetown, Delaware. The show featured all the worst of Walsh's bluster and bigotry without the production value given to his current work as a host.
Bringing the culture with them, of course they're going to. Of course they're going to. That's what makes them Mexican. Of course they will. That is not.
I'm saying if they stop identifying themselves as just Mexicans and they start, appreciating the country that they currently reside.
What is the country? I mean, America. Well, then, what does that mean? If you take away the Anglo-Saxon culture, which is what started this damn country.
A review of Matt Walsh's commentary for the Matt and Crank program reveals that the pundit has previously praised violent political action, saying that enacting change means that you have to make people hurt. Holding signs and yelling loudly will never make anyone hurt. court. The current Daily Wire and What is a Woman filmmaker also claim that we probably lost our republic after Reconstruction, and that as the Anglo-Saxons, which were the first original Americans, die off, our identity and our culture goes with it. And he performed racist impressions and defended teenage pregnancy and marriage, saying that,
in fact, ever since the beginning of time, teenage girls have been getting pregnant. It used to be more common. The peak, ever since they started keeping records of these things, which they only started doing recently, like in the 20th century, but ever since they started keeping records, in 1957 was the peak for teenage pregnancy. 1957.
Walsh additionally encouraged subordinates to participate in sexually demeaning stunts, coercing an intern into exposing themselves and allowing Walsh to shock him with a stun gun in the ass. The Daily Wire party should replace the Diddy party. I feel like that's what we should do.
All right, here it is. It's the Gray Sky Broadcasting dumpster. Intern A is getting ready to perform one of his challenges. Matt, would you like to set this up?
Yeah, what we've done is we've given Intern A an opportunity to earn his name. He's always known as Intern A, but he would like to be called, and I don't blame him, by his real God-given Christian name. But in order to do that, he's been given 10 challenges, one of which he's already completed. That was to put a snake in his mouth. It was kind of weird, but I enjoyed it. That was a real snake. The second one is to lick this dumpster, the inside. Now bring it coming around in the show. He's gonna lick the inside of this dumpster.
But take in, the Daily Wire saw this man and hired him all the way back in August 2017. This photo is a decades-long culmination of bigotry, directly supported by the co-founder in the chair to the left of him, Ben Shapiro, and a dude named Jeremy Boring. They play a critical role in why Matt Walsh is in this seat doing this interview and being able to make this movie. And although Jeremy Boring isn't present on screen or parroted as the Daily Wire's golden boy in the same way Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro are, he still has a massive influence behind the scenes. Not really a 40-year-old white man we can overlook. He has a very obscure, down low, school shooter 10 seconds before it happens type beat persona on the ethos of the internet. In fact, he's been seen debating workers' unions' rights in the form of the N-word, in the form of allowing workers to say the N-word. That will give them more rights, according to him.
5 million people came out today and said the N-word. I'm not recommending it, but right. No one would ever get fired for saying the N-word again.
5 million man N-word mark. We're taking it back.
He's a civil rights pioneer for the N-word, for white people saying the N-word.
This is kind of weird because, like, pretend you're like an average American, right? Clocking in a 9 to 5 just to pay like a $2,000 rent. All you have is like $400 left for groceries at the end of the month. And these are your worst issues, right? Let's say the government passes a bill which allows you and gang to say the N-word, to participate in the black culture activities. Israel will still bomb brown children with your tax money, while the boss tells you you're the one losing work revenue for being 3 minutes late to work, even though he snorts lines in the office. Don't do lines in the office if you manage a restaurant. You have 16-year-old coworkers who will remember, and then we'll probably make video essays, and then we'll use that in a video essay. On top of having the label of CEO, writer, and political commentator, Jeremy is given the title of executive producer in this movie. And that makes me hit a Dwayne Johnson, so to say. Bye, 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 bye. Bye, 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 bye. Bye, 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 bye. Peeling back behind the blinds, we could find that Jeremy, the guy who also has a lot on his noggin, classic, I'm telling you, has played a fundamental role in the development, career, and longevity of the Daily Wire's success in its formative and ongoing years. So other than debating circumstances around a white co-worker saying the N-word, when we gaze into the solar panel that is Jeremy Boring's forehead, what do we see? When we created the Daily Wire, we didn't just get into politics. Co-owner Ben Shapiro states, "We launched this company to have a marketed influence on the culture of America. So when we saw what was happening with Disney, the most influential children's brand on the planet, we knew we couldn't exactly sit still." This Facebook post was written in 2023. And I know hindsight is always in the 2020s, but impairment and its manifestations we disregard. In context to 2013, that was an eye chart joke. I need to stop reading. My humor is becoming like indecipherable. Boring and Shapiro had devised a site that would eventually become the Daily Wire, which they viewed as a next-gen media company representing the 21st century right, an heir to Drudge and Breitbart, supercharged with modern media hood ornaments like podcasts and video, which happened to be Boring's specialty. To get attention, they needed personality, someone to put forward their attacks, and someone who could withstand being attacked. After the Morgan hit, it dawned on both that Shapiro had to become the brand. You being a front man gives us a ton of security. I feel like that's how he would talk. I can better accomplish that with video. I can expose a lot more people to you with video. I can expose them to you in a way they'll remember. Because people are visual. Let me make you famous. And we'll have a much louder voice and a much bigger platform to advance our interests. Sounds like some Dr. Doofenshmirtz type. Anyways, Shapiro's rise to prominence was manufactured in a sense by Jeremy Boring. Everything from his outfit to his internet persona was thought out meticulously. The night of January 2013 was a triumph for Ben Shapiro, his first big score. But Jeremy Boring, the Hollywood producer who's the architect of Shapiro's vertiginous rise, couldn't get past the wardrobe. Shapiro, then the editor-at-large at Breitbart News, had been booked at Piers Morgan tonight to discuss his new book. 14 minutes and millions of views later, Shapiro had accomplished his goal. He'd gone viral. As he watched the Morgan hit, Boring realized that Shapiro's look, while perfectly adequate for a right-wing think tank talking head, wasn't going to cut it in many of the demographics they wanted to conquer. Shapiro quickly began to revise the right-wing dork look, and the makeover began. Before Shapiro, Boring was a fairly obscure Hollywood figure. Shapiro, who began his career in radio production, working around Michael Savage and Laura Ingraham, recognized this reality too. People love Michael, and they love Laura. Because they love Michael, and they love Laura. Not because they love what Michael and Laura are talking about. He said, calling Boring a genius for realizing this long before the influencer genre had taken over pop culture. For me, the ideas had always been paramount, and so it's still bewildering to me that people want to engage with people rather than ideas. But that's why I try and kind of use my platform to push ideas as much as I possibly can, or debate ideas. Of course, the emphasis on debate and ideas eventually became a crucial part of the Ben Shapiro brand itself. 5 years later, Shapiro and Boring, now the Daily Wire's chief content officer and the God King of the site, as the staffers call him, have become dominant players in the right-wing digital media, and the Daily Wire has become an industry leader. Boring says the company now boasts 140 million page views a month, more than 1 million downloads per episode of the Ben Shapiro Show, 60 full-time employees, with plans to bring on more, 1.1 million subscribers on YouTube, and 400,000 on Shapiro's page. In the span of 3 years, frequently beating several of the longer established news sites on the right in terms of traffic. All of these numbers have gone up significantly. The quality of the content is obviously the passion of the authors. The success of the content is marketing and distribution. Boring states, you can raise money and make a film that no one ever sees, or you can raise money and market a film that everyone sees. The same way Candace Owens rose the ranks stoking Nazi propaganda is the same way Ben Shapiro rose the ranks with clickbait titles and far-right rhetoric. It's also the same way Brett Cooper right now is being marketed on the Daily Wire to pander to a Gen Z audience. The Daily Wire has calculated their bigotry, essentially, to create a company which endorses conservative views for profit. Now that you have all the information, movie review, it was not good. I'm not excited for the point-by-point breakdown, fam. This movie revolves around DEI seminars, which is just code word for basically going around and finding people to talk to for money, then stapling the legitimacy of their jobs as an argument against the hierarchical structure of racism, which is kind of funny because racism and capitalism have always gone hand in hand. Like, did the slaves, yes or no, do a lot of things for capitalism, for the white people that subjected them to the terrifying damnation of being a lower class in a capitalist system? Did that happen? I'm not gonna lie though, there is a point to be made. You need to leave. There are a lot of monetizable neoliberal hive minds making millions off of a perceived perception of race, while everyday people have to pay $3,000 for rent. As Matt Walsh is conversating with the white leftists though, he's just despicably and outrightly weird in such a way that his like weird aura just leaks and oozes and like just, it's like a geyser all over. There's 4 major scenes in this movie I want to talk through. The first being the sit-down one. We could see here that Matt Walsh is in his sassy era against the Ginger Queen, talking about cognitive bias. Individuals may create their own subjective reality from their perception of the input. An individual's construction of reality, not the objective input, may dictate their behavior in the world. And I'm not saying we all don't have a little bit of this. Sometimes I send tweets, okay? We all have our human flaws. But here, our Ginger Queen is seen talking about the ways in which her daughter perceives beauty. She's heavily concerned with why her daughter's always picking the white dolls.
My daughter's 4 years old. I am an anti-racist educator, quote unquote. She's still watching Disney movies and she is choosing a white princess over princesses of color.
Have you talked to her about that?
All the time.
My 3-year-old daughter is her favorite princess is Moana.
Love it.
It's a good sign.
Yeah.
But then I also thought, there's a little bit of cultural appropriation here. She wants to be Moana for Halloween.
Remember, Matt Walsh is playing satirical dork you want to punch, which just makes you want to punch him even more because he doesn't know what he's a dork you want to punch, that he's trying to act like you want to punch, but you just want to punch him because you want to punch him, and you just want to punch him. I just want to punch him. But this skews into a question about appropriation. What Red Hair Girl was going on about was something called the doll test, which is a real sociological thingy, you know. In the 1940s, psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark designed and conducted a series of experiments known colloquially as the doll test to study the psychological effects of segregation on African American children.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll? That one. Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because he's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Clark used 4 dolls, identical except for color, to test children's racial perceptions. Their subjects, children between the ages 3 to 7, were asked to identify both the race of the dolls and which color they prefer. A majority of the children preferred the white doll and assigned positive characteristics to it. The Clarks concluded that prejudice, discrimination, and segregation created a feeling of inferiority among African American children and damaged their self-esteem. The doll tests mimic a larger issue of anti-blackness being rooted in a subjective bias. And although Red Hair Girl realizes that her child may be feeding into the system of white supremacy, her doll test is being conducted on a white little girl, which just makes this scene look really weird. Matt Walsh just framed it like this. You know, it's okay that the white child is picking the white doll, but when black children, white children, and Asian children across the board are all assigning negative traits to this black doll, to this inanimate object, imagine how they would view real people. The kid phenomenon of choosing the white doll puts elements of racism at a societal level into real perspective. But I get it. The Daily Wire is utilizing the innocence of kids. I don't think most kids are evil goblins. In fact, I think they're pretty all right. Like Timmy can hang sometimes. However, framing this conversation around 2 white people talking about cognitive bias with their white kids trying to talk about cultural appropriation is flawed. There's no person with swag in this room. Swag. And I love Red Hair Girl down, okay? This is the energy we need, okay? Trust me, that's my girl. But what she is doing here maybe is maybe not the best thing. Maybe center someone else in this conversation. You could also see this seminar as speaking over literal black people by just spewing all the same rhetoric from a white woman. But you tried, Queen. He just clipped you. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. It's Matt Walsh. I'm not... Take my hand, girl. Get up. Your tiara is falling. Feel the rain on your skin. This doll test, however, has very real historical relevance in our society. Now, black accounts of the doll test look a little bit different. When my daughter attended a diverse preschool, there weren't any issues. Reads, what I learned when I recreated the famous doll test that looked at how black kids see race. But when we switch over to a virtually all-white preschool, my daughter started saying she didn't like her dark skin. I tried to assuage her negative feelings about the skin she was in. I told her I liked it. She just quipped, you can have it. But it just wasn't her skin color she had a problem with. She told me she also wanted blue eyes, like the other kids at her school. I spoke with others about the episode. I began to expect that if my daughter had identity issues, despite being raised by a culturally aware black mom like me, an educator at that, then countless other black children throughout America were probably experiencing some sort of internalized self-hatred as well. I'm sure we all know the patronizing experience of trying to be seen in an all-white space. I mean, I'm on commentary YouTube. It's like every day for me. Ha ha ha, thank you, I'll be here all day. But did you guys know that these dolls literally helped the country of America end educational segregation? For the Clarks, the results showed the devastating effects of life in a society that was intolerant of African Americans. All of the children tested were black, and all but one group attended segregated schools. This was because sociological tests have merit. This doll experiment wasn't around for no reason. It was a test for black students to examine racial bias in an age where it determined your educational potential prematurely in such a disgustingly cemented way. We had to use children in order to unpack its effects. Most of the children preferred the white doll to the African American one. Some of the children would cry and run out of the room when asked to identify which doll looked like them. These results upset the Clarks so much that they delayed publishing their conclusions. Mamie Clark had connections to the growing legal struggle to overturn segregation. She had worked in the office of one of the lawyers who helped lay the foundation for Brown v. Board of Education. When the NAACP learned of the Clarks' work, they asked them to participate in a case that would later be rolled into the class action case that went to the Supreme Court. So Kenneth Clark headed to Clarendon County, South Carolina to replicate his test with black children there. It was a terrifying experience, he recalled later, especially when the NAACP host was threatened in his presence. But we had to test those children, Kenneth Clark recalled. These children saw themselves as inferior. They accepted the inferiority as part of reality. My opinion is that a fundamental effect of segregation is basic confusion in the individuals and their concepts about themselves conflicting in their self-images, he told the jury in the Briggs case. The sense of inferiority caused by segregation had to be real. Lifelong consequences, he argued. Consequences that started before children could even articulate any information about race. But with this clip awfully cut out of context, of course, the Daily Wire, being the messy as they are, hit upload, and even the comment sections were horrendous. That woman is ruining her daughter's childhood. Women like this are exhausting. The fact he's being sarcastic and she's not is sad. I love that Matt is making his point while simultaneously having her convinced that he's on her side. I can only sigh. It seems on some places this grift is working. But remember how these clips are framed. The same way this whole movie is. Literally only a scene later, when he attends his first seminar while speaking the way and presenting the way he does. Obviously, he's found out. It's the geyser. It's the geyser of white mask inferiority. We can find all this happens with this initial interaction. Basically, they saw his hairline, got curious. I would too. Then Google searched him, found out his history, and decided it was unsafe because of his tendency to subject marginalized groups to violence when he does activities like this. Matt Walsh also does this weird thing of doubling down with the most boomer level comedy ever.
The white participants in the group feel that there's something in themselves that they have to overcome, when all that's being requested of you is that you be. Hello.
Hi.
How are you? How are
Sorry
you?
about that.
Oh, no problem. You good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remind me of your name again.
Steven.
Steven? Yeah? Okay. Did you want to come up?
Come up?
Yeah. Do you want to come up and share anything?
Sure. What do you want me to share?
Whatever's on your mind.
I just want to know that, like, my physical safety and yours and everybody else's here is okay.
Why would your physical safety not be okay? Did I miss something?
I don't feel comfortable.
What? Can you guys catch me up to speed on what's going on here?
You don't need to be caught up. We're going to be silent.
Is it because I said I had 17 black friends? It might have been 15. It depends on how you count them.
First of all, the audacity to say that to a black person is something only the geyser could fuel. It all comes back to the geyser. It's the geyser hairline. This is like expert racism here. It really drives home the title of the movie. Really philosophical stance to ask if you're racist and then just be the most racist person on screen. But at a broader level, even the comments were outrageous too. Hilarious, she was concerned for her physical safety. Like you were gonna pull out a machete and go to town. Don't you love how inclusive they claim to be? Spoiler, they're not. It's like a cult, bro. They called the racist police. Very odd. These comments are weird to me. This is weird. Because this girl literally gave him a chance. Told him, come up and tell us who you are. Literally invited him to speak. And when he refused and insisted on being an agitating outsider, which is unhelpful to any of the activities going on in the circle, she kicked him out. Regularly that happens with people. Matt Walsh, all you're doing is proving you have the naivety of a 1960s KKK member by crashing these rallies. He kind of notices this too and transforms, which is just like putting on some ponytail and glasses. It's nothing. He still looks like Matt Walsh. Not exactly the Velma Scooby-Doo type. Wow. Not exactly Angel Reese, so to say. This plays into how unaware this movie is of how bad it is. is, and the normative tension of racism that allows white people to sit in a room and participate in conversations like this. Secondly, there's a lot of money spent on the visual and theatric elements of the documentary, and it just takes away from the charm. Like, besides the philosophical question of, am I racism, while being the racism and doing the racism, at least have some style, bro. I know 30 art kids in a grade 10 classroom that shoot, direct, and edit scenes better than this. The CGI is like if Kakashi did a kamui in the air and you kind of just watched it happen. Like, oh, that's an effect, I guess. I don't really know what's going on, but it's an effect. Remember how I said the message is predetermined to? Even the jokes are just so blatantly like 2016 core. The George Floyd sign had to be highlighted. That's what he did in the movie. He used the George Floyd sign to try to find not racist people. Who is taking you seriously? What has gotten into that hairline? See, this movie was a dumpster fire of manufactured imaging. Something which the Daily Wire does constantly. I'm not surprised. But what frightens me is the broader connotations of a movie like this, receiving public approval. See, DEI is kind of just coding for the N-word. In a lot of ways, conservatives parrot anti-black strategies in order to make money and blind you from historical relevancy surrounding the usage of some of these programs and inaccuracy of racist conceptions ingrained in commonality. Well, I agree at a level that conversations against and for the idea of integration should be challenged, because we should very frankly question what our government does for us as tax-paying citizens. But let me boil this down to you, okay? Starting from a micro to a macro, a subjective to an objective, a personal to a collective. Subjective racism, or interpersonal racism, is the same reason why you'll find normative hate comments in mass, especially on black people's content. I mean, the other week, a TikTok beauty influencer literally got ran off the internet because of this. And this hasn't happened just once. This has happened countless times. And sure, you could close your phone and leave, but that same societal normality surrounding racism still exists in the outside world. Systemic racism happens with things like the recent flash floodings in the South, through governmental practices like redlining and city building. A lot of the disenfranchised areas are most susceptible to critical levels of harm and are most predominantly populated by black people. The government not caring or not minding to help the communities suffering from these issues can be seen as systemic racism. I mean, we saw this in Hurricane Katrina.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Jessica Dever in Baltimore. This week marks the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. It also marks the 8th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And a new report found that African-American New Orleans residents continue to be disproportionately affected by high unemployment. Nearly half of them are unemployed.
I've discovered that Louisiana State University's Hurricane Center sent an emergency request to the White House more than a year before the levees broke, before Katrina. And Dr. Ivor von Heerden, the deputy of the Hurricane Center, contacted George Bush's senior counsel at the White House. In a long discussion, he said, New Orleans is going to drown. Not maybe, not will. We don't even need a hurricane. Remember, and by the way, Hurricane Katrina never touched New Orleans. It went 30 miles east. It was simply a storm surge. He said, we cannot handle even a storm surge in New Orleans. The levees are too low. The levees are built wrong. And not only that, but you've built a canal for the oil companies, which is bringing the Gulf of Mexico right to our doorstep. This city is going to drown unless you bring in the Army Corps of Engineers to correct this. But the Army Corps of Engineers, remember, in 2004 was in Iraq. They weren't there for the American people. They were there, to blow up bridges and then rebuild them over the Tigris River. Now, what does this have to do with Martin Luther King and the rights of African Americans to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and democracy? Okay, life and liberty was lost. If this was somewhere else, if this was not an African-American city, an overwhelmingly African-American city, it would have been protected. I'm speaking to you right now from near West Hampton Beach, which is where the movie stars go for the summer and the real estate brokers and the venture capitalists and financial vultures hang out for the summer. This area was wiped out by a hurricane twice. And both times, The United States federal government evacuated people, took responsibility. No one's ever hurt here.
When you create a bastion of community for vile people, what you're going to end up with is very vile discourse. I've even been seeing a lot of YouTubers doubling down and attesting to how racism doesn't affect them. It reminds me of a passage in Black Skin, White Masks. I'm not exaggerating at all. A white man addressing a black person behaves exactly like an adult with a child and starts smirking, whispering, patronizing, cozening. It is not one white man I have watched, but hundreds, and I have not limited my investigation to one class, but if I may claim an essentially objective position, I have made a point of observing such behavior in physicians, policemen, employers. I shall be told by those who overlook my purpose that I should have directed my attention elsewhere, that there are white men who do not fit my description. The hardest talks about am I racist comes in the form of sincerity. I wish for solidarity. I wish for an aspect of anti-black racism not to exist in the world. But getting a white man who profits off of racism and is funded by a company which endorses genocide in places like Israel is not the way to go about building a solid ground of familiarity with the experience of race. I see it in his eyes. I see it in his laugh. I see it in his witty outfit change. I see it in his tokenization of black people. With the fact that he tried to argue against giving money to black people disenfranchised by these same real life aspects of redlining and susceptible to critical natural disasters in the South right now, going right now as we breathe, combating that whole idea of thousands of people being in danger by paying $500,000 to get a clip of a white woman giving a black man $30 in some kind of gotcha moment. He's not a serious person. And it sucks because for the struggle of solidarity, everyone's gonna need to fight, right? More so than the person Matt Walsh, I wish for the unveiling of his persona at a social level. There shouldn't be a world where companies can make millions off of making fun of black race, making fun of the idea that racism affects us fiscally, something millions of enslaved, lynched, tortured, and persecuted people fought for. But it doesn't mean that the Daily Wire doesn't dream. Nazis still dream. Also, notice how he said, am I racist? As in racist, like races, right? Like in a matter of races. But he only attacks the black community. Weird. Anyways, thank y'all for watching. Movie night is literally tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Join the Patreon if you want. The first movie night will be free. Check my community post. The link will be there. My Twitch schedule is going up. It will be in the community post. Hopefully by Sunday, a little bit earlier. I don't know, I'm trying to work really hard for this, trying to be more consistent, trying to get into the rhythm. I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching me. You know, I appreciate the hell out of y'all. Until next time, bye.